and welcome to South Asian Trailblazers inaugural event.
Yes.
We are so excited to have you guys here today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Simi Shah. I am the founder and host of South Asian Trailblazers, and we are a podcast and a platform that dives deep into the journeys of trailblazing South Asians. And tonight is very special because I started this platform 2 years ago in the midst of the pandemic, at a time when having a gathering like this was pretty much unimaginable. And I started Trailblazers for two reasons. I had recently graduated from college and was feeling pretty disconnected from our culture, from our community, in the absence of campus life and student groups and all these things. And I was searching for a way to restore that connection in this new phase of my life. And at the same time, being in this new phase, being a working professional, I also became hyper aware of just how many South Asians were out there leading and achieving across industries, across spaces, and a ton of you are nodding your heads because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes! And so for that reason, I was inspired to start Trailblazers, to capture these stories and to create a space for myself and hopefully for generations of South Asians to hear from these trailblazers and to share in their journeys as we chart our own paths. And so for that reason, tonight is very, very special to see that tiny idea come to life in this way with our first ever live podcast. With that, I'll just say, if any part of our mission resonates with you, if you're just looking to learn from leaders who look like you, if the conversation we're about to have today strikes a chord, please check out our platform. We're at South Asian Trailblazers on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a newsletter if you don't like listening and are more of a reader. And of course, please tag us in any photos and videos you take tonight. We're at South Asian Trailblazers on Instagram, LinkedIn, and the like. But thank you all so much for being here tonight. And now I will turn to the second and more important reason that tonight is more special. And that is this woman. I've had the privilege of getting to know Aparna over the past couple of weeks and months, and she is truly a tried and true trailblazer. She's an iconic woman. And I feel very, very lucky and privileged to know her, so please join me in giving her a warm, warm welcome. Aparna was actually born in London and spent part of her childhood in Dubai until she moved to Texas, where she lived for the better part of 25 years. And then she moved to the greatest city in the world, New York City. She is an avid traveler and the founder of a luxury travel company called My Golden Balloon. She is also a licensed attorney with a JD from Vanderbilt Law and a BA from Rice University. She, of course, is the breakout star of Indian Matchmaking, where she became an overnight ambassador for women demanding to be heard. And on top of all that, she's written this incredible book, She's Unlikeable and Other Lies That Bring Women Down. It is witty, it is gritty, it is raw, and it is relatable, and I am so, so excited to chat with her about it today. Ladies and gentlemen, Aparna Shewakramani.
Thank you all for coming out here tonight. This is a very special place for me to start my tour. I did New York on purpose. It's my new home. Yeah, I wanted to start my tour here for a very specific reason. Simi came to me with this idea, and I thought, how cool to do this live, and then to get you guys involved, and to meet each other, and then to sign books if you guys want. And so this is a special first stop for me. After this, I head on to LA, then Houston. The book comes out in India with HarperCollins on April 11th. So I'll be in Mumbai, New Delhi, potentially Hyderabad, Goa, and Kerala, and then I will return to do more events in May here in New York, and that will be my tour. You guys kicked it off, and that is very special to me, so thank you for all of you for being here tonight, and I am so happy to be here with you.
So I want to start at the beginning of your Indian matchmaking journey, which is incidentally the beginning of the book.
Yes.
And she's standing in line at LAX. She's just been on another terrible date. And suddenly Indian matchmaking falls into your lap. Tell me about the origin story of how and why you joined the show.
So I had met a guy on Bill Mill, okay? And he was great. He owned my favorite tea company. And I thought, wow, he's the founder of a tea I've been drinking every day for 3 years. This is how love stories begin. I must own half this company. Not really, but kind of. So we, of course, start chatting. As many of you know who have done these apps, when you're in LA and Houston, it fizzles right away. And I was so bummed. And my friend said to me, you can make lots of money. Just go there, pretend you're in town for a baby shower, and see if you can see him for coffee. And then he won't be creeped out that you like came all the way to LA, but you love this tea. Not you love this guy, you love this tea. Okay, so I fly out there, it works. I'm like, I'm here for a baby shower. He's like, can we have coffee? We have coffee from 4 p.m. to 3 a.m. He loves me. I can't stand him. I keep drinking more wine thinking I am going to fall in love with this guy. And he keeps looking at me and falling in love with me. And I'm like, oh God, this is going all wrong. So I call United the next, when I get home at 3 a.m. and I'm like, I'm super disappointed. I'm, another failed date. I tried, I gave it my best, and I'm like, can I go stand by earlier? And they're like, well, man, my flight's at 8 p.m. This is when there used to be change fees and all those things. And I'm like, my dog is sick. And I just start crying. And the woman on the phone is like, oh God, yeah, tomorrow, 9 a.m., it's 3 a.m. right now, 9 a.m., just stand by. I'll put it in the notes, we'll get you on this plane. So I'm standing there at LAX the next day, 12 hours early for my flight, and I'm trying to get on standby. Everyone's boarding, and so I'm scrolling Facebook, and someone has posted, are you single? Are you South Asian? Are you really looking for your life partner? I was like, well, yeah. I'm here. I flew to LA for a coffee date. And so they're like, apply here. So I press the little button, I apply, I get on the plane, I land, they've responded. I would like to set up a Skype interview with you. And that is how the casting process for Indian Matchmaking began. Except when they said that, when they were like, hey, we got your application, I was applying for a new car loan at the time. So I was like, what credit agency? They're like, no, a matchmaking show. And I had forgotten. I did the application so quickly in that 5 minutes as I was boarding the plane that I had forgotten I applied. So when you do things in haste or without thinking, you'll never know how that will change your whole life.
Absolutely. So you go through this whole process, the audition process, all these interviews.
The psych eval. I passed, y'all.
Did you ever balk at doing something as personal as finding a life partner on screen in such a public way?
No, and I should have. I really should have. I really should have thought about it. I just thought that no one would watch the show. At the time, we thought it would maybe air in the US, maybe Canada, maybe India. And I was like, whatever, I get this matchmaker. I had applied to this other matchmaker in Washington, D.C. She's about $25,000. And she's an Indian matchmaker here in the US. And I thought it was her. So I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna get that woman for free now. A few years later, I was like, that's a great deal. Because there's no other matchmaker in America. It's still just that woman. I think she's the only Indian matchmaker in America. And so I just thought it was her. We'd already chatted. I liked her 4 years prior. I was still single, and I was like, oh, she's gonna come knocking on my door. This will actually work, and it'll be free this time. No, nothing in life is free, guys. And it sure wasn't that matchmaker, it was another one. So I wish I would have had more foresight, but I also just didn't have the information, and here I am.
So fast forward many months to July 16, 2019. The show goes live at 2 a.m.
2020, during the pandemic.
Oh, 2020. During the pandemic, and you stay up to binge watch all the parts you're in because you have a New Yorker magazine interview at 9 a.m. the next morning.
9 a.m.
How did you feel when you watched and saw your portrayal on screen?
So we were told, a little backstory, 6 days prior, when the trailer came out, because the trailer only came out 6 days before, that it was going to air in 143 countries. And that we would not get rights to see it before everyone else in the world sees it. But what was weird was on Twitter, and I knew nothing about the industry, but on Twitter, all these journalists were already talking about me. And I was like, well, how did they know? Well, apparently all these journalists get rights to see the show before I, who am in the show, get to see the show. So they're all reaching out to me, and they're setting up interviews. They want to talk. They're like,
yeah. And I'm like, what's going on? They're like, you're the star. I'm like, yeah, I'm the star. I don't know what they mean by this, though. This is weird. What's the star? I'm alone. I'm single. Like, I thought one of the other people would have found love. I thought the show would be about them. So I'm like, well, how am I the star? I'm single. And so I am best friends with Shaker. And at the time, we are talking like 5 hours a day, trying to get ready mentally for this drop, because we have 6 days to get ready. And we've now found out it's airing everywhere around the world, except the countries that don't have Netflix. So North Korea, China, like all these places don't have Netflix. They don't get to see it. But we're on the phone, it's midnight LA time. So he and I are both in the central time zone. I'm in Houston, he's in Chicago. It's 2 a.m. He's pressing like refresh on his screen and he's like, it's up, gotta go, bye, and hangs up on me. So then I'm just sitting there by myself. My whole family's gone to bed because they're like, we actually don't care. And I watch the show. And I'm like, yeah, they don't care yet. And I watch the show and I'm just confused. I'm like, well, what is this show? Like, this isn't the show I made. This isn't the show I was told about. This isn't the show I was on. And I was like, who's that girl? She's kind of bitch. Why is she so mean to Shaker? We're best friends. What do you mean I was mean to Shaker? Like, he's my best friend. Like, what do you mean it didn't work out with Jay? We're still friends. Like, Philip and I still talk all the time. Like, why did they make it seem like Philip didn't like me? Like, Philip liked me. I was like, what's going on? And I was just kind of confused, and I was like, that didn't even seem accurate. There are parts that just weren't true. And I was like, oh, this is weird. And so I lay there in bed. By now it's like 5 or 6 o'clock. I've discovered I'm in episodes 1 through 5 at this point, so I also have to watch 1 through 5, but only my parts. And then I wake up a few hours later. I don't even know if I slept. I'm gonna wake up. You know when you like just toss and turn? And I have the New Yorker magazine. And Seema's little face is in the Zoom box. And I'm like, I'm gonna punch this woman. I saw what you said about me last night. That's what happened last night. Yeah. I'm like, I know what you said about me and my mom. But I'm so polite, which is also my flaw if you see how polite I am to her in season 1. And that I just sit there on the Zoom like shell-shocked. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like, do I be mean to her? Do I not? Smriti Mundra's on the call. This reporter's on the call. They're all in their like pajamas. And I'm like dressed because I worked that day. I didn't take the day off from work. I didn't think I needed to take the day off by that one interview, right? No, wrong. I should have taken the rest of my life off to do that. But yeah, so this reporter's asking me all these questions, but she's more focused on Sima, so it was like a really interesting interview because I just got to sit back, but they had still asked me to be on this call, so at one point Sima just like logs off. I don't know, mid-sentence, she just walks away or something. And I'm just left there, and so they do the rest of the interview with me, and I'm like, okay, that went well, but I still gotta figure out what just happened. Like 3 hours ago I finished watching the show, and I still don't really understand. And so from then on, the process, pretty much for the next week or two, is me just trying to still grapple with like, I can't say what's untrue, that's against my contract. I'm a lawyer, I can't like speak out. Yeah, it's really interesting press. I can't talk a lot about it because of contracts I've signed, but you kind of have to play this game of what you're allowed to say versus what actually happened. And that was very difficult for me. And it kind of to this day remains difficult, but in that period especially, it was very difficult.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Did that impact your process of writing the book?
Yes, so when I was writing the book, I found myself processing for the first time because I had been in solutions-oriented mode, follow the contract mode, figure out what's happening mode throughout that whole press journey that I never actually had stopped to be like, wait, what happened? Like, and how does this make me feel and process? And it's different also in your own head because you'll like start a thought, start processing something and then move on from it. But when you're writing, you don't get that liberty because you're telling someone else about it. And you have to make it so clear and so easy to digest for that other person, all of you, that it becomes a very difficult processing because it's not just that you have to process it yourself, you have to process it to explain it. And when you're trying to explain it to someone, you have to start like digging into the memory as well. What did that feel like? What was I hearing? What was I seeing? Because even in my own mind, if I process last week, I'm never going to go into that depth. But when you're writing these words, oh, that was right. I was typing these words. I was like, wait a second, that really hurt. Wait a second, I was really betrayed. I was really disappointed. I was really defeated. I was really scared. I mean, I would literally have to take breaks to just like break out crying. And I never cried about those things before. But I'd also never had to explain to someone or explain to myself what had happened before.
Yeah, that makes
a ton of sense. I'm curious, I rewatched some of the highlight clips
I
last
have
night.
never rewatched that show after 2
Well, it was
2
just
a.m.
highlight clips of like things you'd said, and I was watching it, and we were like, this really isn't that bad. Like, I hate beaches. I kind of hate beaches too. I mean, some of the things you said in retrospect didn't sound that crazy. Why do you think in that moment you were so controversial?
Vulture magazine, or Vulture, the media outlet, did an article on me. They actually did like 4 articles on me, which was really weird. I'm like, come on, get a new topic. But one of them, I guess they got some intern or someone to write a list of everything I hated in the show. And I go through it in the book. And literally the whole article is literally just my dislikes. And I'm like, well, I'm just a really opinionated person. They take me for 200 hours. I also have a really long list of things I like, and that never made the edit. I hope that each one of you, I mean, I don't know if you're as decisive or opinionated as me, but I'm sure you have a list of things you hate and love in this world. And I'm sure if someone taped you for 200 hours, especially on first dates, you would start sharing the things you hate and love in this world. And so for me, it was interesting because that's the moment it hit me that all the things that were told to the world were only one side of things. It was all the things this girl doesn't like. And no one thought about what was taken out. And I started realizing that more and more, that the people who edit things decide very clearly and very calculatingly what they're giving you, but yet we don't clearly calculate what is being given to us. We just consume. We consume our news, we consume reality TV, scripted TV, we just consume. And I thought, this is actually something that's wrong with what we're doing. I was watching, Love is Blind just a few months prior to my show coming out, and I found myself just doing it too. Oh, why is, she feeding her dog wine? Why is she with that person? Why, the person who actually was there for me after Indian Matchmaking when I was getting the death threats and the cyberbullying was Jessica Batten. We are friends. She blurbed the book. She's on the back cover. She called me. She was like, I'm here for you. And I thought, well, what a weird club to be in. The Netflix villain club. How did I get here with Jessica freaking Batten? Turns out she's the sweetest human being in the world. She loves Jesus and her dog. I mean, she is literally as good as they come. And they did that to her. And I was like, wait a second. They literally took the sweetest girl in the world, did that to her. I would not call myself the sweetest girl in the world. I'm nice though, I'm really nice. I'm really generous and kind and loyal, but not the sweetest girl in the world. And so I think it was a lot easier for them. Also, again, I'll always remember the 200 hours. I don't know how many minutes I'm in the show. I never watched it again. Someone was like, did you ever calculate how many minutes you got in the show? I'm like, no. It's a shit show. I'm not doing that.
So then there's this clear turning point, this inflection point where you decide that you're not going to just sit there and take this quietly, you're going to reclaim your narrative.
Mm-hmm.
What was that moment where you realized you needed to start to turn the tide and tell your side of the story?
I told you it took 2 weeks to kind of process to a certain degree what had happened. And that's also when the Indian press comes in. I don't know if you guys have ever read Indian press or spoken to an Indian journalist, but they are wild. They are like little mavericks. They will just come at you with their claws, and they will do these leading questions, and they'll build a narrative for you, and just if you nod a certain way, they're like, she said yes, and they make the title like something that they said that you agreed to. So you never said those words, you maybe just nodded, right? And that's when I was like, this is interesting. Wait a second, there's a whole other media out there. I was doing Japanese news, South Korea news, Singapore news, and I was starting to interact with all these different journalists, because now the show is like snowballing. Like, we're 3 weeks in, and it is just, it's #1 in all these countries. It's one of those shows that people are like, did you watch it? Did you watch it? Oh, so it took a while to get there, right? And it was interesting because I was like, I can just start telling my story, but I had to figure out how. So I had these 10 years of law behind me. I had the contracts I had signed. I had Netflix watching every media interview I did. So they're on every interview with you. They sit there. They're on the call. So they can be like, mute, you can't say that. And so I was like, wait, I can figure this out. So I started figuring out. So you can see like my media, not that anyone should go Google and read all 200 pieces of my press outlets, but you can see my story start to change. because I'm like, oh, I can tell them a little bit more. I can eke out this part or that part to this person and that person. And I start just trying to figure it out. Again, I'm a lawyer in Texas. I know nobody in the entertainment industry. I've never even heard of I had to ask someone what a publicist does. I'm like, how is a publicist different than my social media manager? And my friends in LA and New York were like, you're insane. And I was like, what does a publicist do? And they were like, they get you press. I'm like, I don't need more of that. What else do they do? And they're like, no, that's what they do. I'm like, nope, don't need one then. Because so the journalists were also coming to me. So what else changed? The journalists were DMing me. So now we're in a new age where journalists can DM the person they want to interview directly. They don't have to go to Netflix. They don't have to find you. They don't have to go to your publicist. They can just be like, hi, I'm a reporter for the New York Times. Hi, I'm the relationship expert at Washington Post. By the way, we dated the same guy. Relationship expert. I dated the same guy. She's Jewish, and she was like, yeah, I think we're Indian guys. I'm like, hi. Don't know why. But we dated the same guy. So then the Netflix guy is like rolling his eyes because we're like talking about this guy before our interview, and we're like, what did you think of him? Like, I was with him for 2 months. How funny, yeah. And the PR guy at Netflix is like these girls, I hate them all. But that's his job, to listen to me speak. So yeah, I thought it was interesting that they reached out to me. I thought it was interesting to see the way that different media outlets around the world treated me, and I think all of that came together for me to start slowly changing my arc.
Yeah. I find that super interesting because, current media has turned very clickbaity. It's all very sensationalist. Recently we've been seeing a lot of hit pieces about female founders. Most recently with Emily Koss from Glossier. What do you think it was that you said or did, or the particular journalist that you were interacting with, that made them want to write your side of the story versus another hit piece?
I don't know. That would be questions for them, right? I mean, they came in droves. I didn't have a moment to think about like why they came to me, why that journalist, or even who they are. Like, I sometimes think back to, I can't even remember people's faces or names. Like, I spoke to so many journalists. And I spoke to them at such weird hours too. Like, I was working 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day as a lawyer. I was dealing with the death threats, the cyberbullying, which I'm sure we'll get to, 6 to 8 hours a day. And then I was doing press. I was doing Indian press from 9:30 p.m. to 2 a.m. I was doing European press from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. I would start my workday at 9 a.m. I would take breaks and do lunch breaks with the American outlets. And then I would do America also from 4 to 7. Wow. And then I would eat dinner, try to take a nap, and start Indian press again. And this went on from July to October, okay? I had not had like a sip of water or exercise. My family's like, how are you alive right now? You barely eat, like you work all day, you're on press all night, like what are you doing? And that's when I made the decision to quit my job as a lawyer in October, because I had to quit either social media or I had to quit, what was the other thing? The press, can't do that. And then I had to quit, I had to quit my job. So I quit my job. Never been a lawyer since, guys. Thank you, media. I have a really good relationship with the media. I like them.
You really do.
I have a whole chapter in there about how I love the media. And it's probably really controversial, but I had really positive experiences, and mostly because I think I had 99% female journalists. And they were on Team Aparna. I like them still.
Be like Aparna.
Yeah.
So there's this part in the book where you say, I went through a host of search queries I wouldn't wish on my worst enemies. Can you talk a little bit about that? Talk about the death threats, the cyber attacks, and everything you faced in the aftermath.
Yeah, so a lot of people like to speak on the internet. Again, as a lawyer in Houston, Texas, I did not know about this. And I thought it was really interesting the way that people got so vested in me, in my relationship with my family, in my relationship with my friends. I mean, they had an opinion on the jewelry I was wearing. They hated my teeth. They hated my teeth a lot. I don't know why. I mean, I didn't wear my retainer, but like they hated my teeth more than I could ever hate my teeth. I don't even hate my teeth. They thought I looked like Hema Malini a lot, and sometimes that made them mad because they liked Hema Malini, but they didn't like me. Can you imagine the bullying is like, you look like this actress I love and I hate you. And I'm like, how did we just connect that? And so it was really interesting to see the scope of hatred. You would think it's just like, we didn't like your attitude, but they didn't like a lot of things, and they were very vocal about it. And it was the first death threat that really got me, though. This man was, I talk about him in the book, but he's shirtless, very overweight, very hairy, and holding a gun. And he says, I want to see you in an orange jumpsuit. And I was like, aren't you going to go to jail if you kill me? Like, what's this about? And my issue also was that everyone knew where I lived because I owned that house and it's public record. And no one had ever thought to tell us, hey, if you own your home, you should probably go to the office. It takes 8 weeks, like whatever county you're in, and hide your address. So people were showing up at my home. They were parked outside waiting for me to come out with my dog. They were just driving by. Someone drove by at one point and took a picture of my house, and I'm sitting like in the window reading, like one of the couches is right there, and he tagged me in it. He tagged me a picture of my house with me sitting in the living room reading, and I was petrified. I was like, is this person a crazy person? Are they gonna come back at night? And then the death threats from my mom started coming in, and that's when I was like, game over. Like, what is happening here? And it's interesting that I didn't get much sympathy or support from the people I thought I would get sympathy and support from, aka the people who made the show. And I, to this day, don't know how credible these threats were, but what I do know is how I felt, and I felt scared. And I felt petrified, and I was like, can I take my dog on walks? Is it safe? And now, think about this too, we're in July of 2020 or August. People are also like, bored. Like boredom has created a whole new internet, like cyberbullying. So I feel like, not that I'm like on a show now and could tell you the difference, so we'll see, but I feel like it was like a frenzy because of like a global lockdown at that point. Like July was like a crazy time for the whole world. I mean, people in Malaysia and like across the world were also locked down, and everybody had something to say, and they apparently wanted to say it to me. Like, can't you talk to your friends about it? Like, WhatsApp group? Like, talk to your family? I don't know. Why do you have to talk to me about it? So, I'm constantly in shock still at social media, and after seeing Love is Blind this season, I was just like, I really felt for those people too. Because our show is relatively small compared to that, I would think. I would assume, I don't know numbers, but I'm just more conscious now of the human ability to tear people down on the internet, and it's really sad.
Yeah, it is. You spoke briefly about your mom, and in the book, it really comes through that you get a lot of your tenacity and grit from her. And when you were fairly young, she made the courageous decision to divorce your dad at the time because she didn't feel safe in her own home. In what ways has that decision impacted your outlook on your romantic life and your search for a partner?
I don't know if I'm sure some therapists in here is like, oh, it affected her. For me, I don't know. I was always just like about being strong as a woman. It was never like a thing that I had to question. All my friends were. Our peer groups when we were younger really form us. And I had a really strong peer group, and I went to like these gifted and talented schools, and then I went to the top universities in America, and like I saw these people get into really equal partnerships and healthy relationships, like even in high school, and I just always saw what I saw as good examples of my peers, and that really shaped me. My female friends who were doctors were marrying other doctors, and they were everybody was a professional, and everyone had dreams, and they were striving to do better, and it was almost more a first generation experience that I was witnessing. And even in my non-South Asian friends, it was about the way that we viewed relationships as a peer group. And I think that made a lot of sense to me and kind of informed what I was looking for. So by the time we get to Indian Matchmaking, I was 33, right? So in Texas, everyone gets married by 30, like first kid 31, 33 is the second kid in my peer group anyway. And so my friends were already in like these very stable relationships with 2 children, and I'm coming into this, show telling Sima Auntie and the production team, I'm ready to get married, I'm ready to settle down, and I wanted someone that was just like my friends' husbands. Like none of them were for me, but I wanted someone like them. I like them. They're good guys. They're good husbands. They're good partners. They're good sons. They are equal partners. They respect their wife and her profession and her dreams if she wants to take time away from, work. And I just saw that as a whole around me and thought, that's my norm. Why should I not want the same? I deserve the same. And I think a lot of people saw that deserving on screen and really resonated with it, and they didn't know where it was rooted in. But they were like, man, this girl really believes that she deserves a good partner. And I'm like, don't we all? Because in my world, we all did, and then many of them got it, and I was the only one floating out there still looking for Mr. Kind, good, great father and son and husband, and I didn't think that was a lot to ask for.
I don't think it is at all.
No, Sima did. She thinks it's a lot to ask for.
Something that really got me even when I was reading the book is how sincerely you're looking for a life partner. You know, there's a common turn of phrase in The Bachelor where someone says, oh, he's not here for the right reasons.
Oh, yeah.
Like, in this book, you can tell Aparna is there for the right reasons. And, you know, there are moments where,
Bless her heart.
there's, your date with Trini, who clearly was not there for the right reasons. What gave you so much conviction in this process?
Season ones of shows are very interesting. The people that you meet in a season one, you will never meet again. Of any show. I mean, I was little when The Bachelor came out. That probably ages me a lot more than y'all. But I watched the first season of The Bachelor. Those people are still married. Like a lot of the first, second, and third seasons of The Bachelor, they're still married today. They went on that show to find their partner. There was no social media frenzy around it. There wasn't that the whole country was going to watch you every Tuesday night. There was no mythic Chris Harrison at that point. He was there, but he wasn't a myth or a legend. He was just the host of this show. And I feel like that was really special for season one of Indian Matchmaking. Whether or not I'm best friends with some people or even just acquaintances, we all know, each other, the cast, even though we never tape together, but we know each other. But I'll tell you this about every single person on season one. They were really there looking. I mean, they were serious about it. We had promised them that we would get married at the end of the season if we found the right person. So these people were on a mission to find us the right people, because wouldn't that have been great if like at least one of us had found someone, and you would have seen the whole process on the screen, like from believing and then hoping and then realizing that hope and then committing to that. That would have been a beautiful arc. It didn't happen. TBD on if it will for many of us in season one, but I think it was interesting that they found this group. And I think for any season one now, I watch like season one, well, maybe not Love is Blind. They knew that was a Netflix show and it's a social experiment and all that stuff. But yeah, watch a season one of any show and you'll see this kind of rawness and vulnerability and hope in the contestants that you will never see again.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Something else that got me was you meet Sima and you had no context on who she was.
You couldn't see my face because it was my back. But I was disappointed. I was like, you're not the woman in DC. You're not my free $25,000 ticket to matchmaking. Like, who are you? Like, wait, there's only one matchmaker. And they're like, she came all the way from India. And I was like, no, ma'am, I did not sign up for that. I did not. I signed up for the woman in DC. And they're like, what made you think it was her? And I was like, she's the only matchmaker in America. And they're like, yes, so we brought her from India. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Here we go, they brought her from India.
Yeah, and then for obvious reasons, I mean, there's, a cultural clash. Like, her views on matchmaking and the way she pairs people is probably a lot more traditional than maybe what you went in expecting. Is that right?
I don't want to put it on our culture. My family in Bombay has nothing in common with that woman. And they are generations of being there. And so I don't want to take the easy out and say, it's our culture that made her say those things or believe those things. It's not, it's her choice. And people should be held accountable for the choices that they make. And I think that we should do it individually and not as a culture.
That's super fair. Do you think that, she came in understanding what exactly you guys were looking for?
I can't speak for anyone else, but for me personally, we did not see eye to eye, and I don't think she had any concept of what I was even saying. She asked me, and I say this in the book, if I knew Hindi right off the bat. I'm like, well, it's not very good. I'm doing something really important. I'm explaining that I want a life partner. I want to do it in my native language because I think that this is an explanation I want to give fully. Like, I thought if I could tell her enough things, she would understand. So you see me over and over again kind of, no, you actually don't see it. But what happened, you see edits of it, but what happened was I just kept saying something. Like, so for example, I go, I want an introvert. And she's sitting on the couch just like this, and she looks at me blankly. I'm like, someone who's not as loud as me. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, someone who's, not the life of the party. He's not going to sit there at the dinner table and, like, take over. Like, I want him to be more quiet, not the funniest guy in the room. And she's just looking at me blankly. And I'm like, oh, she doesn't understand. This is a language issue. Like, she has asked me to speak in Hindi to her, and I can't say any of these things in Hindi. So I'm like, what do I do? So I just keep rephrasing it over and over again, and they let me. Cameras let me do this. And the woman looks at me blankly, and when I stop talking and I'm like, you get what I'm saying? She looks at me and she goes, I have someone for you. He's very jolly. Y'all, I've just talked for 40 minutes. None of what I said was I want someone jolly. And I look at her and I'm like, wait, what? And she's like, he's just like you. He's very jolly. I'm like, no, but we just said I don't want someone like me. She goes, give him a chance. You'll like him. It's Srini. Oh, God. That's who she brought to me.
That did not end well.
Poorly.
So tell me about your relationship with some of the people from the show, be it Sima, Shekhar, these individuals that became your castmates and family in their own right.
So some of us are best friends but have never met. Can you imagine that? Ankita is one of my best friends in the world, and I have never met her. She lives in New Delhi, and I live here, and we've had a pandemic, and we are going to be meeting for the first time in April when I go. And that's weird to me because we lay around in our pajamas with she lives with her parents because that's India, and I'll just be walking around my apartment. We'll cook at the same time, she'll do her nighttime routine while I'm getting ready in the morning. We'll do all these very familial and familiar things, but we've never met in real life, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Another person I'm really close to is obviously Shekhar in Chicago. We went on 2 dates on the show. I think y'all only see one. And then we went out that night. We have all these mutual friends, and we just stayed friends, always. Jay came last night to my party. So did Ravi and Vinay. I love Ravi and Vinay. They are awesome. I love Jay. They were all out celebrating me last night. It's really fun. We don't care how we knew each other on the show or didn't. I mean, obviously, I never went on a date with Vinay or Ravi. They both went on dates with Nadia. But I moved to the city and I got to know them, and they're the kindest people. They're so good to me. They're generous and loyal. Vinay showed up with a bouquet of roses and a book in his backpack. He's like, I brought the backpack just so I could bring the book to the bar, and I want you to sign it. And then Ravi saw a copy someone had brought to the bar, my friend who threw the party for me last night, and he's like, can I buy that from her? And she's like, yeah, I have a couple of copies at home. You don't need to buy it. And he whipped out a pen and was like, can you sign it for me? Can you imagine? These people are my cheerleaders. They're my support system. I could call on them for anything. And why? I didn't even know them when we taped the show. I didn't even meet them until a year and a half later. But there's something that bonds us all, and I think that's really special.
Yeah, absolutely. You speak about how, this journey has certainly had its ups and downs.
Yeah.
There are moments where you were vilified in the press. There are moments where you met some of your best friends today.
Mm-hmm.
You spent thousands of dollars. You ended up quitting your job as a lawyer at an insurance brokerage firm.
Yeah.
Would you do this again?
100%. 110%. I would do it differently, maybe. I would be less polite to Sima. It would be more sort of to the press off the bat. But I would do it all over again. And everyone asked, would you be on a season 2? And I'm like, I wouldn't say yes and I wouldn't say no. I would take it as it comes. I think there's a lot more left to my journey. I think I really connected to the women and men, but mostly women I met on that journey and my continued journey that I share on social media. And I could see myself feeling like it was okay to continue sharing that on an international way. So yeah, I would do it again, and I would do it over, and I would maybe do another season. We'll see.
Stay tuned, guys.
Season 2 is announced. Sima is the matchmaker, and I think they announced it's coming out this summer or fall. So we know that from the press.
Wink, wink. So now there's a reason we're obviously here tonight.
Yes.
It's the fact that you wrote this amazing book, She's Unlikable and Other Lies That Bring Women Down.
Yeah.
Why did you write this book?
I was very happy with those journalists. I told you that, right? But I also told you that I was telling each one little snippets. And I thought, what if I could tell the whole story, my story, but also the story of how I got here? I mean, when the show first came out, it's crazy to see those little insights on Instagram, another thing I didn't know about before. But you can see how many people visit your page and consume you and the things that you're saying. And you can see thousands of DMs coming, thousands a day, literally. And I saw a recurring theme. It was all these women from all over the world. I mean, I'm talking like Russia, Korea, like, I don't know, places I've never heard of too. And they were like, how did you become this way? And I'm like, how did I become this way? And they weren't being mean about it. They were like, well, how did you like sit there and look at this woman, this matchmaker, and say those things to her? How did you process this? How did you believe that you deserved a partner like that? Like, literally, the show doesn't tell you any of that. Maybe like hints of it. Maybe they hint at things that also aren't, you know, accurate. And I was like, what if I just wrote a book with that in mind? How did I become like this? And so the book is an interesting mix of my life leading up to the show, and then the process of the show sprinkled throughout it. And I think it's important to do that because it's then my story. It's my story starting from a very young age. Yeah. It's my story about my great-grandmother. It's my story about my autoimmune condition and what it's like to have a chronic illness. It's my story about why I moved to New York City one day in my mid-30s with no job and no real friends here. Hi, Liz, you were my friend here. I had a friend here. But I was like, I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a job. I didn't have an idea what I was doing. Why? And so the book was written to answer those questions. I wonder if many of those women may never read the book, but I think it needed to be out there. I also thought about it, and as I was researching the book, I thought, let me think of the other South Asian women who have done this kind of memoir. Crickets chirping. Amazing South Asian women have written memoirs. I've loved them all. I've read most of them. But none of them are women in their 30s who are sharing with you that sometimes they're a little lost, sometimes they're a little scared, sometimes they're a little defeated. Sometimes they rose above it. Sometimes they found their resilience, their grit, and their perseverance. And in very, I would say, ordinary ways. And maybe they're just ordinary to me, but my study abroad experience, my first heartbreak, many of you have studied abroad, many of you have had a first heartbreak. There's a relatability to my story that I hadn't found from another South Asian woman's memoir yet. And I thought, I think this story is important, not mine, although that's kind of narcissistic, but yes, but this story of this woman. And what if I started it and then one day we had a bookshelf full of our memoirs and our stories? Because so many other women, especially women who are not women of color, believe that they deserve to tell that story, and those stories exist, and ours is just silence. If you didn't start a unicorn company, or if you weren't like already famous, and you know, Priyanka Chopra, amazing memoir by the way, but obviously she has a platform. If you weren't all those things, then you didn't deserve to have your story told. That didn't seem right to me. Every other person is telling their story. Why not a South Asian woman? And so I was really happy to be given this opportunity. I realized I was given it because of the show, but now I'm hoping that when I write this and people read this, they start writing more. I want a bookshelf full of your stories, and I will read them all, and I will learn from them all, and I will continue to grow from learning those stories.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think it's fascinating because the notion around memoirs is you write them at the end of your life, right? It's a capstone moment. But why aren't we talking about our lives in the moment? Because that's when we're processing and learning the most about ourselves, and that's when we're relatable to people.
Yeah. In fact, chapter 11 was added very quickly right before it went to print. And I wrote it in 2 days, and I finished it, and someone reviewed the book, like one of the first reviews was like, loved the book, ended quite abruptly. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm still living my life. Like, I ended abruptly because that was the day that I finished writing it, and that's what had happened that day. Like, it was that week that I was talking about, like the week I was writing it. I'm like, I can't give you more because I have to turn it into the publisher. And I think I do end it. I realized even at the time that it was kind of abrupt, and I go, you know, I believe my future is bright. I think that's the end of the book, by the way. And this woman's like, I just kind of needed more. And I was like, I really believe my future is going to be bright. Like, what more do you need? Like, I don't know what she wanted me to forecast my future for her, or she wants me to keep like a running vlog for her. I don't know.
Astrologer to do it for you.
Well, I mean, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, maybe that's a book too. But it was interesting when I read the audiobook out loud, and I read my own audiobook, so. That's kind of interesting. Did you know you have to audition for your own audiobook, and most authors don't get the spot? Yeah, and what they give you is your consolation prize if you don't get to read your own book is they let you pick one of like they give you 3 people and you get to pick which one of their 3 that you like. And I was like, oh, I had no idea. I thought everyone got to read their book, and they're like, no, your tryout's coming out soon. And when I got it, I was like, really, you were gonna get someone else? And they're like, most of the time you do. I was like, okay. So yeah, but on the audiobook, I had never read the book the full way through because I wrote chapter 1, and then I wrote chapter 9, and then I wrote chapter 6. I mean, I wrote them all, and then I never read them all together. Because we were on that quick deadline where I just like threw the book in and I was like, but yeah, so I was reading the audiobook and really reading it, because when you read an audiobook, I mean, you gotta read it, like word for word, very slowly, no skimming, and the book, I'm reading it and it gets to the end and I'm like, and I put it down and the sound engineer's a 25-year-old girl and she goes, that's quite the ending. And I'm like, yep. The future's bright. And we both laughed.
You guys gotta read it to find out.
Yeah, why is my future bright?
So, you know, you've walked away from your legal career.
Mm-hmm.
You're charting this new path. You have a book out.
Mm-hmm.
Besides your book tour, what's next for you?
I'm working on a few projects that I'm very excited about. One of them is an unscripted show, my own, and we are finalizing the pitch right now. I will be pitching it to people, so where they're like teaching me how, because obviously I've never pitched a show before. And we have a deck that they're building for me, and it's about our show, and I'll be doing a lot of research while I'm in India for the show, and hopefully you guys will be watching me on TV host my own kind of show next year. And people are like, why do you say it when you don't know if it's going to happen? And this is why I always tell people, it's okay if it doesn't happen. I would have moved on to another project. I don't mind if this one fails, or what we call failure. I feel like so many South Asians are like, don't say it till you get it. And I'm like, share it. What if that inspires someone who's thinking in this room of an unscripted show to be like, I'm going to go home and start my deck. Maybe your show will get made and mine won't, but because I talked to you about it, you're like, oh, that was an idea I've always wanted to pursue. So let's normalize talking about the ideas as they happen. And if one day next year you're like, where'd her show go? I'll be like, I failed, moved on, guys. And congratulate me for moving on. And you probably will, and you probably won't even care that I failed, if I failed at it. I think it's a great show, and I think it's gonna happen. But I don't know, that's just something I kind of tell people nowadays too, that I'm happy to share my projects with you guys, and I hope that all of you use this as a tool to share with your friend groups or your workplaces what you want to do, because I think that inspires us, it pushes us, it motivates us. It's kind of like that accountability even to ourselves. Like, I told these people I'm doing it, I'm going to try it. You don't actually care if I'm going to do it, but in my mind, I feel an accountability and I'm going to do it. And that's about the tiniest things or the biggest things in your life. So go forth, share.
Absolutely, it's all about manifesting it, putting it into the ether.
Yes, I
well,
like that.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts so candidly and for writing this book. It's truly amazing. I'm going to pause now to open it up to audience questions. Please don't be shy. Raise your hand. Come.
Hi. I'm so excited to read your book.
What's your name?
Patel. Hi, Simi. As a South Asian matchmaker who does not charge $25,000 and was around when you were researching, my question to you is, what do you think is like the biggest issue, or in your opinion, like kind of why online dating or modern dating just sucks right now?
Does it suck right now? I don't know. Maybe I'm an optimist. I don't think it sucks right now. I think people are still meeting each other. I think what's happening is because there's so many people out there, we're not meeting people who are in the same place as us. And so I think what we need to do as we modern date and as we online date with all these choices, we need to find someone who's on our kind of page. You know, I meet a lot of great guys and they have a 4-year plan to get married, or they want to think about it, or they're not sure they want kids. And I have to be very candid with myself and them that I'm at an age where I am eager to meet someone. That doesn't mean I have to get married in 3 months or anything like that, but like I'm very honest with myself and them. And so I think what happens is a lot of times that people rush into dating someone without getting that stuff kind of cleared up before it starts. And it's miscommunication and it's wasted time. I don't think there's any wasted time, but I think that's what happens often. And so we call it like a mismatch, or you know, the woes of dating. But what if we were all just really honest? Like, I'm just dating right now. I got a bad not me, but I got out of a bad relationship and I just want to date right now. Then like, if I hear that from a man, I'm going to say, I really respect that. I'm glad that you're using this time to meet different women. I'm not there right now. You know, I wish you well on your journey. I'm going to go. but if I like them, maybe I will be friends with them and stuff. But I think that's why people say, often when I ask people, why do you keep saying that? And they'll tell me a story. I'm like, that person just wasn't on where you're at. And that's okay. And it's not an age thing. All 32-year-olds are not on the same page. All 19-year-olds aren't on the same page. Some of my friends met their spouses when they were 13 and 14 years old, and they knew this was a good life partner then. I certainly did not know anyone was a good life partner, even at 24, let alone 14, you know? So let's meet each other where we're at. Let's be honest about it. I think we would all be more hopeful about dating if we did that. You're welcome. Great question, though.
Hi.
Hi.
So when the entire world was saying horrible things about you,
Mm-hmm.
and did you ever go through a point where you sort of stopped for a moment and said, wait, is that actually true? Am I actually like that? And if yes or no, and if not, how did you get out?
I don't remember that I did. It would be surprising to me if I ever got to that point. I can't think back on a point where I thought that. No, I just didn't relate to that woman on the show. I don't know that person. And I immediately separated myself from that person. And I was like, I don't know who that is, but this person, me, is friends with my dates, like I said, has a loving, supportive mother, like I know in real life is true, has good friendships with solid women and men who are my friends. So I never had to question if that was me, because I knew me. I think I also had a lot of good fortune of going on reality TV and taping reality TV show and then dealing with the aftermath in my 30s. A lot of the women I spoke to after the show reached out to me from The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, and they went on these shows when they were like 24. And I think about who I was then and who I was 10 years later, and the resources, tools, and knowledge I had at 33 or 34 when I started the show versus what I had in my arsenal in my 20s. And I would not have been able to know these things about myself, that's not me and I don't question it. There were some low moments. There was this Vanity Fair article written by this, I will say, not so nice journalist, where she was saying these terrible things about my mother and I. And it was surprising to see it there because it was Vanity Fair. And she was speaking as if she had interviewed us, even though she hadn't. And she was like, what a toxic relationship these two have. So I was like, really? Like that lovely woman and I have a toxic relationship? And she's like, all of Aparna's problems stem from that horrible mother of hers. And she's like, did you notice that they even dress alike? And she's like, this is clearly an issue of a mother-daughter relationship gone wrong. And I'm like, my mom and I dress alike? No, we don't. But I literally had to sit there with that Vanity Fair article for like 10 minutes and be like, did my mom ruin me? And I was like, no. Like, are we clones of each other? Are we in a toxic relationship? And I didn't notice. And then I was like, no, you just think these things because now it's Vanity Fair. So that's another cautionary tale. We're so easy to dismiss the troll on the internet, but the minute someone puts like some validity into like a publication where like, oh, now we must listen, that girl's still a troll. I don't know that journalist. I would like to meet her one day, but she's basically a troll. And I'm like, just because you got paid by Vanity Fair to troll me doesn't mean that I should pay any more credence to you than the normal troll on Twitter or, social media. So yeah, no, I never thought that about myself. And I would caution anyone to believe anything that someone says about them if they know in their heart of hearts who they are, what their beliefs are, and who they love in their life, and who they give their time, energy, and love to in their life. Also a great question, though. Look at you guys. You're going to have strong. Slow but strong.
Rhea?
Would you say that dating after the show has been harder or easier than before the show? Like, is the additional scrutiny make it more difficult to see what Simi was saying earlier, who's here for the real reasons, or does it just give you more opportunities? What do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's definitely given more opportunity to some people in the cast who got good edits, and definitely less opportunities to those of us who got bad edits. So I would say I'm on the bad edit, title of the book, and I have not gotten more opportunities from it. I had a really hard time online dating, especially in New York City. I think that a lot of men I met wanted to go out on a date with me and tell their friends that they went out on a date with me, and that was really... it wasn't even hurtful. I wish it was hurtful. It was just a waste of my time. And I was really irritated. And I was like, wow, I shouldn't have worn the heels and the cute outfit because you're a waste of time.
A lot of them just wanted to talk about the show the whole time. Some of them wanted to be on the show. One of them wanted me to give him Seema's number. Like literally, he was like, I need her number. Like, and I'm like, wait, why? You want a misogynist matchmaker? I was like, did you watch the show? Like, you want that as a matchmaker? And he's like, my family would like to hire her for me and my cousins. And I'm like, we should. Flag. Right, I was like, we should go. Like, it's time to go. So for me, it has not been fruitful. What has been helpful, though, is as I meet new people, a new surprising thing is happening, especially maybe in the past 6 months, where people have now gotten to know me more. Maybe the book will help, maybe it won't, I don't know. But they're like, hey, I have a cousin, or I have this brother-in-law, or I have this person, or I really think this guy in LA is a good fit for you and he's coming into town. Do you want to have coffee with him? So it's becoming more that my network has expanded and people are thinking of me once they know me. Do I wish it was different? Yeah, I think it would be easier, but I also have a strong belief, call me overly optimistic, that the right person can't be swayed by any of this anyway. That whoever I'm supposed to meet anyway. And so it doesn't matter if the dating apps did or did not work. It doesn't matter if these introductions do or do not work. I recently assigned, this concept in the past year that I'm going to meet this person in New York City. Some of my New York City girlfriends now have great boyfriends in Miami, Las Vegas, and LA. And I'm like, oh, you can meet people anywhere. You can live and work anywhere and meet people anywhere. Back to the matchmaker's question in this room, as long as they're on the same page as you. So I'm asking my friends, like, how are you connecting with these men in LA when you live in New York? They're like, he's really ready to settle down and get to know me and like find a partner, and we want to both get to the conclusion pretty quickly about if we're going to move forward and keep investing. So they're almost like evaluating at every stage, like, should we go to the next stage? That is not something that I was finding with the men I was dating on the apps here. And it's almost like it was the wavelength match more than the geography match. And so I think that's like an interesting thing for me to now keep in mind as I move forward dating, because I'm very inspired by what I'm seeing. And I like these conversations people are having very candidly, like I said, about where they're at. Yeah. Anya?
So I guess my question is kind of following up to what Maria said. It's probably so difficult now, right? Like after you've reached all this fame, to tell the differentiation between people that actually want to be your friend and have good, genuine intentions for you versus not. So how has it been really difficult balancing that and trying to find out, who's actually wanting to be friends with you for you versus more of the fame that comes along with it?
You're talking about in friendships, not in dating?
Friendships and dating.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. I think I'm still learning. I think I will always learn as I move forward, and I'm on TV more and more, whether in my own capacity or on another dating show or whatever. I think it's going to become exponentially harder, not easier. I am also weirdly a trusting person. I call it my small town roots. Like, I'm from Texas and I'm not New York. Houston is not a small town, but the way that I have seen New York treat me this past year, I've realized I did come from a very sheltered place for the past 35 years. That's a long time to come from a very sheltered place. And my eyes are not wide open. To this day, I will admit it, that I am learning every day who people are and who they're not. And I'm trying to discern that, and I may never be good at it. And maybe that's part of my strength, that I'm never going to be good at it. Like, maybe we don't all need to be good at discerning right off the bat who's, there for the right reasons or not. And maybe those reasons change over time, and maybe we change over time. And I don't know, I have to stay more open and optimistic about that, because, I've been burned. I've been burned a lot in the past year and a half. And it's okay to admit that, and it's also okay to admit that I'm not going to suddenly figure it out one day, and that maybe this is my personality. I'm okay with that.
We'll take one last question. Rohan, you want to go?
Well, we have two. Can we take two quick
Yeah,
questions?
we'll
Okay, and then you two.
So in the show, you get your mother involved very early in your process to find a romantic mate. How do you think that relationship evolves over time with South Asians in our generation? Do you think that they will get family more involved, or will it kind of remain a taboo subject until a relationship is, kind of run its course and that that's the end? How do you think that changes?
So I did not choose for my mom to get involved. Let's be very clear about that. I have had relationships in the past. Obviously, I'm in my 30s. I have been deeply in love twice in my life. My mom has met no one, ever. She ran into one of my loves, at a wedding once, and she kind of knew. Moms kind of know, right, like who the person is, and she kind of brought him up over the years, and like she got the vibe, but we never talked about it. And that was my relationship with my mother. We're very close, but I said, when I bring someone home, I'm going to marry him. And so when they were like, Srini's coming over right now, I was like, who's Srini? The jolly guy? And they're like, yeah, he's going to be here in 20 minutes. I'm like, the jolly man's coming here? They're like, yeah, you're going to get your sister and your brother-in-law and Sima in your living room. And I'm like, my living room? And they're like, yep. Why do you keep repeating this? I'm like, God damn. And so Srini was brought to the door. He had a spot. He had to sit in it. We chatted, and then he left. I don't think that's dating. Like, that's not that I went on 6 dates with him and then brought him over for dinner. Although a lot of my South Asian friends have done that. And I think it's up to each family unit to discuss and to feel comfortable and about your relationship with your parents. I have such a close relationship with my mom. And that's almost why I don't bring men home to her, because she's going to, even with that one guy that she kind of knew about, I really liked him, or I didn't like him. And I did like him, I didn't like him. I'm like, oh God, like I don't actually care. I have to like him. It doesn't actually matter. And she's like, look how successful he is nowadays. Or, see, he had kids. He already has 2 kids. That could have been you. Yeah, it could have been me, but it wasn't. And so that's why I choose. So we all choose for different reasons to either get our parents involved or not get our parents involved. In that specific case of her meeting Srini, I chose to be on a show that would get her involved. Does that make sense? I don't think it's taboo. A lot of my South Asian friends have brought their people over, have a drink or meet him for a drink, or it's not like something very formal, but like, let's grab breakfast with them when you come visit me in town, family, like meet this person I've been with for 3-4 months, but please know I've only been with them 3-4 months. Yeah. One last question.
I know that you said that this was an opportunity to share what happened in your story and have control of your own narrative, but will you continue to write in the future?
Yes. I will definitely write in the future. I don't know if it's going to be books right away, because I am working on this unscripted show and a scripted show, and I've outlined 2 movies already. So I'm writing in the entertainment field, and I love writing. So if I can bring it to every kind of outlet, I would be more than happy. Someone was like, you should start travel writing. I'm like, that would be a dream too. Like, just bring me a byline in Condé Nast sometime soon, manifesting. But yeah, I will always write. I think this is the direction I want to go. I don't see myself going back to law. I might have to. Eventually, you do have to work, maybe. We don't know. We're testing this theory. I'm about to go in year 2. So hear me out on whether or not that works. But yeah, I love it. I'm passionate about it. I'm open to it working. I'm open to it not working. If you would have told me in July of last year, when my friend brought me like, hey, I know someone who wants you to write these 2 movies, those 2 movies, that person who wanted to buy them didn't end up buying them, so now I just have these 2 movies floating around, and I can edit them and take them to different people. But like in July, I had never even considered writing a movie. I was like, how could I write a movie? And then I wrote it. Like, you can pick up a laptop and you can write anything, and it is so empowering for me personally, and it is so in line with who I am, and I had no idea all these years. So now I'm even more excited, more energetic, and I want to see where all my writing takes me. We'll see if it's a book later. My literary agent would love it to be a book. We talk every month, and she's like, how's your second book coming? And I'm like, what second book? So
She wrote this one in 18 days.
20 because of the two-day chapter 11.
Oh.
My future is bright.
20 days.
20 days.
Still got to be some kind of record.
Yeah, 20 days. Yeah. So I did like very specific writing days where I gave like 3 days, 1 week, and I would write until I hit 7,000 words that day, because you contract for the number of words you write. So I knew I had to write 60,000 words. So I was like, I'm going to write 7,000 words today, and I don't get to sleep until I write 7,000 words. You will be surprised how quickly you can write 7,000 words. When it's 8 p.m. and you really want to go to bed and you still have 3,000 more, you start writing really fast, because you're like, oh, I wanted to watch that show before bed. I wanted to go to bed early tonight. And so for me, that's how this worked. I self-imposed deadlines, stuck to them, got this book out really quickly, and then at the end, for 2 days, got the last chapter out.
Thank you guys so much for those wonderful questions. And thank you to Aparna.
Thank you to Simi for hosting us tonight.
Before we close out, I just want to plug this book again, guys. It's amazing. Aparna talks about everything from her experience surviving Hurricane Harvey and rescuing her mom, to dealing with an autoimmune disease, to obviously her experience on the show. But it is truly so powerful. It speaks truth to power. It talks about what it means to be a woman in the public eye and how to reclaim your story. So we have copies on site today. Please get one. Aparna will be signing them.
Yes.
And I'm going to leave you with a parting quote from her editor that I just found so powerful. Reading this book is like drinking rosé on a rooftop in a new city with someone you've just met but feel like you've known forever. This truly is a phenomenal book. Please check it out, guys. And before we close out, I want to say a huge thanks, one, to this lovely woman for coming out tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And to a couple of people without whom this night would not have been possible. Hemant, I don't know where he is. Hemant is behind Brick and Click, this beautiful space that we're in today. Please look around at the amazing brands that they have on their shelves. And thank you, Hemant, wherever you are, for lending us your generous space. Trisha from Brown Girl Mag, who continues to be a champion of so many voices in this space. Thank you so much for all your support. A huge shout out to Anheuser-Busch's Pac Asia Group and the South Asian founded brand Tinto Amorio for sponsoring the drinks you guys are drinking tonight.
We like them.
Yes. And of course, to all of you, to the Trailblazers team, to the former guests of our podcast who are here tonight, to our editors, to friends and longtime supporters, thank you so much. It means so much to have you guys with us today. As I said, you can find us anywhere. This podcast will be posted on our feed. You will hear your laughs and questions in it. So please check us out. Continue to enjoy the food, and thank you guys so much for coming out tonight.